Good morning, folks. Yes, we have all of our folks here. So we are live streaming, so we will go ahead and have this. Going to talk about the building projects. Thank you for being here. We're going to boundary lines. I'm just going to look at our district website and kind of the process where we are, and then third, school mascot. So fun topics that folks everybody likes to talk about. So anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thanks folks that are watching online. So an overview of where we are. Mick, would you just come up and just kind of give an overview of where we are? Mick, it works for Nat Holtz, what is your official title?
Senior Superintendent.
Senior Superintendent, okay. So I appreciate you being here, and if you just kind of give an overview of one, Capital City High School, and then the current high school, kind of an overview, and then if our folks here got some questions.
Okay. Capitol High School, we're blasting, moving dirt, or rock, not really dirt. We'll have a building pad ready by the end of next week, and we'll be starting footers here in the next 3 weeks. So I would say by first week of June, we'll be going vertical with the new building. So it's going very, very well. The weather's kind of got us slowed down, but the good thing about rock is there's no mud. We get to work on rocks, so that makes it easy. The existing high school, we're working through our plans. We've got a good attack plan for this summer. We're going to do a lot of the asbestos removal this summer, and we're also going to work on a section of the high school we call Area G, which is over by the little theater in there and everything. So we're working through that, and that way we can turn over some classrooms back to the school when they come back. We will be setting up mobile trailers for temporary classrooms that'll let us flow through the students who are in there. The biggest priority right now is children's safety, and we're trying to figure out how we get the kids from Nichols Center to the high school. And once we get all that figured out, the job should fairly go pretty easy and streamlined. So everything's going well. We did get we bid out our structural packages, concrete, steel, precast. That's all within budget. It's all in line, and those guys should be signed up next week. So everything's progressing right along.
Okay, sounds good. Any specific questions? You're good. Okay, thank you. Do you have any updates to make, kind of get basically with Capital City and the current high school from an architecture standpoint? Do we need to touch on? You want to? If you would, please.
I guess on the Capital City high school, we continue to, obviously there's work happening on the site, a lot of work happening on the site, but we're continuing to design, so we're continuing to bid out early bid packages like structural steel and concrete. So what the design team's working on now is things like building access, meeting with the IT folks and maintenance staff, how to control the buildings, for when the kids arrive versus when the kid is late, when the student's late, or when the parents visiting, intruder access, inside and out, all those other things that we think about. There's a lot of work on that right now. As you know, the name of the school, the mascot, and colors are now known, so we're finishing up the presentation drawings to show what the inside will look like. We are also studying the building as far as code compliance, how the building is compartmentalized for municipal folks, municipal code authorities, compartmentalizing the building into separate buildings for fire separation areas, things like that. It's a big building, has to be kind of carved up for that and shut down if there's a fire. We also are continuing to define and design. You see a lot of earthwork moving out there right now. That's for the building pad. We continue to work on the sports fields and the practice fields, and thinking about what those will evolve into in the future. So there'll be another large big package coming out that's prohibited outside the building. What you're seeing now is really concentrated on getting the building as those trades can show up. But another package coming out is we get finished with the athletic books on what the sports athletic practice fields will be. What else can I say about that? Oh, we have, I believe maybe, if I'm not mistaken, quality control said we May 15 final CDs due. Have May 15th quality control and May 15th final set. Does that sound right?
15 is supposed to be CDs.
CDs, final CDs. On the current high school, that's kind of different. We have a building that was built in 1962. The current high school in Nichols was built in 1974. So we've done a laser scan of all the buildings to see what is there. Can't see through the walls though. So we're constantly comparing those 62 documents, 74 documents, to the laser scan of what we see. And occasionally we ask Nichols to rip into a wall and tell us what's there. It doesn't quite look like the original construction documents. So we're constantly updating the virtual model of the building on conditions we find and comparing them to the old conditions. And sometimes the old systems were changed from the original construction documents just over the course of that decades. So we're working a lot on that. We're pushing right now for area that might think it may have already mentioned area G, April 16th, to have the final drawings to them so they can start renovation. Did you mention this? On area G is along Rockwell Street, that whole way, all the way up. We the first phase along the mobile units. The top floor up there will be finished over the summer. There's 20 classrooms we're rotating through. And then we'll I think the area G is due 16th, and the remainder, I don't know the exact date, it's the end of this summer. We're working to kind of negotiate the dates when we'll complete the rest of the building for bidding. But it's definitely a different animal as far as existing conditions. They both, I want to stress again, they both have the same program, same goals of rooms, teaching spaces, collaborative spaces being applied to new construction and renovation. So there's a lot of area there. It's the path to get there on the two. What else? Oh, that building also is all new, everything is renovated, plus new construction, meeting center, auxiliaries, conference area, all new HVAC, so every space is touched and renovated in some ways, minimum to HVAC finishes, but we are programmatically having to move some walls around to achieve that architectural program. The other thing we're working on again in that building is code compliance. We can't get perfect code compliance with existing, but we're working with the municipality to again fire separate the high school from the common to Nichols. So that changes the type of doors and shutters you put in to shut the building down. We're going to do the same exercise on access control. I can tell you that the control and visibility of the building will be extremely improved from what it is today as far as the staff's ability to see who's coming and going and control that flow. And frankly, at the same time, it'll feel more open instead of bottleneck that narrow path. JC and Nichols will actually be widened up to get back and forth and another stair at it to relieve that pressure between the two. So that's about all I can think of. Any questions on that? Ongoing design and all it's flying. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kerry. It's a very exciting time. I mean, these are, working through this, we're talking about boundaries. Folks, I've had folks say to me, are you really going there? Well, we have to go there. The reality of it is, but it's what a great opportunity we have in going through that process. So, thank you guys for giving an update on our construction project and where we are at this time. Next thing I want to touch on our boundary line. And when you initially think the word boundaries, you think of, I have to stay within, it's not the most inspiring word when you think of boundaries. I want to remind folks, for all of us, the ultimate goal is if you live within our district, school district lines, you're going to get a quality education. With that being said, we do have boundaries within that, and boundary lines could probably be a better word. We could Google or Wikipedia or synonym for a better word than boundary, but it is what it is. But our goal is, regardless of where you go to school, it's going to be quality education. But I've touched on, I've said many times, we recognize there are traditions, we recognize there are within neighborhood schools that they take pride in, and they should, and we want that. But we do need to work through the boundary line. So here's kind of where we are in the process. Our district, this is all on our district website. I want to kind of just tell you where we are right now, as far as on the process. Don't go there yet, please. This is just our jcschools.us, is our district website. Our current, if you could go to About Us, top left here, and just go to the boundary district maps. And then scroll down and click on the district map here in the blue, about halfway down, right there. Thank you. So this is our current boundary lines that I've shared from Centertown to Holt Summit to the Osage River. Go to Lynn, go to Rolla, Westphalia. This is Morrill Heights, the Italy boot here on the bottom. This is Morrill Heights, East, Thorpe, Cedar Hill, Lawson, Southwest, Bel Air, Pioneer Trail, North, and Coweta. So those are our 11 elementary school boundary lines. There are, for a variety of reasons on where they're located, some make perfect sense, some, well, that's screwed up, fair. Some, we better fix these, everything that's messed up when you go through this process. We're not looking at doing wholesale changes to our boundary lines. We said that a year ago when we were campaigning. We said we did anticipate some boundary line tweaks or changes because of the location of Capital City High School. It's within Cedar Hills boundary lines, which feeds Lewis and Clark. And we'll touch on that here in a second. But this is just our district boundary lines. We've gone through a boundary line process about a year and 3 months ago with Morrill Heights, East Elementary, and Thorpe Gordon. And we changed the boundary lines here. We basically put the boundary lines back like they were. East Elementary was overcrowded. There was some space in our other schools. We put boundary lines back like they were. East Elementary now is our second smallest elementary school, so it did alleviate some crowding issues there at East. So we went through that process a year ago, went and met with parents of each of those buildings, and I don't want to say it was perfectly smooth, but relatively through the process, learned some things with that last year. So kind of the same concept this year. Let's be proactive. We've had probably, I don't want to exaggerate this, but probably 20-some, we have them all documented, 20-some meetings, boundary meetings that we've had, or times where we've had discussions where folks could ask questions. The last one was this last Tuesday at Thomas Jefferson. We specifically invited Thomas Jefferson parents. I had 160 flyers Tuesday morning at the car rider drop-off. Someone rolled the window down. I didn't pull up their wiper and stick it under there. They might have ran over my foot if I was trying to do that. But just to welcome folks, and hey, I'm Larry, superintendent, would like to invite you tonight. If it works for you, handed them a flyer, said you're invited. Maybe I should have said we'll feed you. That might have had more folks. But we had a good turnout, maybe. How many do we have for those that are there? 30-ish, 25, 30, 35. So it was a good turnout. Basically kind of went through the process that I'm going through and let them ask any question they wanted to. So we have another one coming up with Lewis and Clark. And then we will come back and meet with the committee. We had a boundary line committee. We had 11 elementary schools. We wanted to have 3 reps from each building. Okay, so in a perfect world, we would have 33 folks that represent their respective neighborhoods and elementary schools. and gone through that process. So that's the next step after we have Lewis and Clark. We have met with Thorpe Gordon, Cedar Hill, South, Lawson. We had West scheduled. The committee tabled a couple of the scenarios. They're all available on the website here. I'll show you where they are here in a second. When a couple of their scenarios that affected West Elementary were tabled, not completely off, but tabled, then they basically, well, we don't need to meet. Oh, okay. But we were going to meet with West. But basically, of where our middle school boundary lines here, West was possibly, that was one of the scenarios there discussed. So would you close this and then go back to our main website there, and then we'll look at the first current line. So scroll down. And, oops, I'm sorry. Go to the front page, right home page, I'm sorry. And then go down there to your boundary committee. Just a lot of information. This is the first tab under quick links. And if you scroll down to scenarios 1 and 9, if you click on that map underneath 1 and 9, please, thank you. This is our current boundary line. You can scroll down and look at the map for middle school. So you have the elementaries, then the next step. So in the light blue is Lewis and Clark, and in the off pink, for lack of a better word, is Thomas Jefferson. Okay, these boundary lines were drawn in 1993, and with a goal of having enrollment similar between the two and having the poverty rate similar between the two. That is why the number one question that I get asked is, if you live over here on C or somewhere in this tail of Cedar Hill, why I better be fixing these folks that are closer to Thomas Jefferson, they're right now over here to Lewis and Clark, I better fix that. The reason why is to keep the poverty and enrollment the same. That is why this boundary line is to keep the poverty rates similar. And for the most part, they have held true since 1993. It's a fair question. There are some folks, maybe you feel this way, maybe some of our viewers feel, why don't you just draw a line down the middle, let the chips fall as they may, and if one school is 30% higher in poverty and has 500 more kids, so be it, and let the, if folks don't like it, they can move. And I literally had folks share that with me. In 93, the community said when we campaigned a year and 3 months ago, we want to get the same opportunities for all 9,000 of our kids district-wide. It doesn't matter. Bigger schools, everybody here has a different philosophy. I had 56 kids in my graduating class in Bethany, Missouri. We have a lot more than 56 per class here. Okay? You have a philosophy about it. You want small class size, you want large class size. Right now we have, I don't know what the average is, but 600 and district-wide, our K through 6, our K 2, 4, and 6, I believe, first, third, fifth, and seventh all have close to 700 or over, but our district-wide average is in the 600s. At the high school, when we have 2 high schools, instead of 700 kids, we'll have 350 kids per class. So with that being said, we're not going to have one school that has 200 and the other one that has 800. One of the reasons why we did this was we were out of space. We wanted to give students more opportunities. And so that is the reason why. I didn't mean to stay on that point too long, but I think it's a real important part that our community in 93, we said this when we campaigned, our current board, future going forward, we want to have similar schools between the two. Okay, so, and some have different views on that. So this is our current boundary lines and the location of, I'll stick my finger on there. That's smudging fingers like my kids do it on our TV. Right in here, this end, is the location of Capital City High School. And that is in the blue, which feeds Lewis and Clark. Because some folks are like, why are you even going there? You know what's hacking folks off. We said a year ago, if we pass this, we would anticipate some changes because the location is within the blue, and we would like it to be located where it would serve the neighborhoods and community where it's actually located. So we would like to have the school in the pink. Why? Because Thomas Jefferson feeding Capital City High School and Lewis and Clark feeding the current school, we needed to make some changes. So that's why we're going down this road through this process. So looking at different scenarios that would allow us to do that, was kind of the guiding force. We started out with 2 primary goals: keep enrollment the same and the poverty rate similar between the two. It was a given, but I had never put it in writing, to have the location of the school within that. So we added that as a goal. We added, when we start having meetings with schools and parents, don't split my kids. Right now, we split Thorpe Gordon, okay? So right here in this pink, right here, if you live right in here, the Thorpe Gordon boundary line is right here. If you live in this part, you go to TJ. If you live in the rest of Thorpe Gordon, you go to LC. So we're splitting them. That's not ideal. Students are classmates K through 5, and then we're going to split them. We would like, if possible, not to split anything. We may end up, but that's the goal. And then the other portion was try to minimize the number of students that are changing schools from where they're currently going. And bottom line, just to keep from disrupting the learning environment, collective action, or strength in numbers, having a community feel, changing schools on a regular basis, is not ideal. But you do what you have to do, working through that process. So this is our current, and this is one of the 5 options that has been kept, as in just keep it the same. And if this scenario was a final approved, and the Board of Education will make the final. I was asked this last week. So is the community, is there going to be a vote? Is it going to be on a ballot? No, it's not going to be on a ballot. Our Board of Education will make a final decision on our boundary line. We'd like to have that decision made by this August. The reason being, Capital City High School opened in the fall of 19. We make a decision by this August of 18. Folks would have 1 year notice. And so if folks are like, I really disagree with that. Okay, you have 1 year. They did want to move. We hope they don't, but we also recognize that's possible. So we want to give folks, I have shared kind of kiddingly, but I mean it. In a perfect world, we would say 18 years from now, here's where the boundary lines are going to be, and you got 10 years to plan accordingly. It's not a perfect world. Schools are closed now. And also I've shared we're not out in western Kansas that has townships and north and south and east and west. We got hills and rock and other things that have some influence on this. So any questions on this general? This is scenario 1 and 9 that has been kept. I'll show you the other 4. Any questions on this? Okay, could you, okay, so right here, I won't have you click on anything yet. Here's the proposed boundary scenarios. There are 5 that have been at this point. It's not finalized. These aren't the 5 finalists. We are trying to narrow and get there. We're not just going to keep kicking the can. And these are all on the website. I encourage you to go look at them. So there are 5 that are kept right now. And we also, we not put in writing, but the part of changing students that have been with their friends. So let's say it goes into effect the fall of 19. Okay, well what if they are in 5th grade right now? And then in 6th grade next year, in this fall, and they go to TK or LC. And then we make these changes that go into effect the fall of 19. Well, here you're going to get a change. If it did change there, but it'll fall down. If it would change that, so we're not going to ask students once they start in the school to change. We'll have a grace period, and we will give them the choice. Okay, so at the end of the day, where they live is where we'll provide transportation. If we have a grace period and allow them, they would be responsible for transportation, but we would work through that in any situation. Siblings, we've discussed that scenario. So what if I have a sibling and I have a 7th grader and a freshman right now, and then what would that look like? Am I going to split them up? Work through having options. It's not being finalized. We're vetting the process, trying not to overreact or underact, but look at scenarios and use some common sense through that process. So with that being said, so scenario 7 is the second one. Let's click on that. Go ahead and scroll down there. So basically what this took the top part of Cedar Hill and just basically moved, because right here was, on the previous map, right in here was all light blue. And so it's basically just took this over. If you live there, you still go to Cedar Hill, but once you get to middle school age, then they would go to TJ and then Capital City High School where the blue dots are. Okay? Is that splitting Cedar Hill? It is. Is that ideal? No. We recognize that, but it does put the location within, where it's at. So there you can see the 2 dots, and you can see there's a scenario there that we split that was tabled because I believe it was 16 or 17% difference in poverty. We drew a line just straight down the middle, and the base had an east and a west of our district boundary lines, and but it's much different in the poverty, and the enrollment was quite a bit different as well. So this is scenario 7. If you scroll to the top, it's got a 4-point current percentage of students 9 through 12. Our demographer that we hired, a difference of 4.1% of our current 9 through 12. Okay, we also did this with our middle school and elementary students to see on the poverty with that. It's not as accurate. It's not as accurate because we have title schools that in our books says they are 100% poverty when they are not actually 100% poverty. And so when we figured that, it's not as accurate, but it's relatively the same comparisons of the poverty when we look at these different scenarios, elementary-wise, middle school-wise, and high school-wise. But we don't feel it's as accurate because 4 of our title schools in our system is 100%, and not any of our schools has 100% of the students that are qualified for 300 schools. But in our system, they are because they qualify for that as a school. So this is scenario 7. Any questions on this scenario? Okay, let's go to scenario 10. Scenario 10 is basically our exact boundary lines right now, other than Thorpe Gordon is not split. So if you live in this portion of Thorpe Gordon, you now go to LC, and we would not be splitting any of Thorpe Gordon. Okay? As you can see, the location right here of Capital City High School is still within Lewis and Clark boundary lines. If this scenario is approved, the location of Capital City High School would not be within the boundary lines of the community that it serves. Okay? That's one scenario. That's scenario 10. Let's go to scenario 13 and 14. So scenario 13. So all this is on our current map that we had earlier. Thorpe Gordon, that I just shared with you in scenario 10-1, doesn't split. And then this here is the top part of Cedar Hill. And all this did was went down and around. Here's Edgewood, went down and around up where this would be located within Thomas Jefferson boundary line. So this is all Cedar Hill. Move the boundary lines here. If you lived right here, you'd still go to Cedar Hill, but once you got the middle school and high school, you go to TJ and then Capital City High School. Okay? That's all that is. Okay? And then 14. Scenario 14. Scenario 14. So here's South Elementary. Here's Cedar Hill. That last one we had a knob that came down. This one it goes a little wider. But in this scenario, we looked at them moving just the South Elementary boundary lines. Right here is south to expand lower to come down into Cedar Hill. Now, on any of these, we could tweak and change elementaries. We don't take, I don't take that lightly. Oh, we could change the elementary. That wouldn't. None of that process would be taken lightly, and we recognize that. But this scenario does have, if you live within this area right now that goes to Cedar Hill and would be going to LC in the current high school, if you lived here in this scenario, you would go to South Elementary, and then to Thomas Jefferson, and then to Capital City High School where it's located. Okay? We've talked about if we did that and say it will go into effect 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we'll have a grace period. Folks said, I bought my house based on I thought here's where they were going to go to school. I could say it's on blue in the face. We want all of our schools, and it doesn't matter where you go. I would not do that. That's when it's a very emotional topic. It is the goal, in regards to where you go to school, it's quality. But in this scenario, we've also talked about having a variation of this scenario. Say, okay, if you live right here, you still go to Cedar Hill. We split Cedar Hill, so if you live in this portion, but then once you get to middle school and high school, then you will go to TJ and LC. But at the elementary, you stay at Cedar Hill. So then Cedar Hill would be split. Here's Cedar Hill, but then this portion would go to, still stay at Cedar Hill, but then go to TJ and then Capital City High School. So there's wrinkles and variations on all of these. We're just trying to work through the process, work through scenarios and discuss. Any questions on this? Or any of the scenarios? Let's scroll, let's go ahead and close this map. So here, we're not going to go through the rest of these. Here are the other scenarios that we're looking at. Click on scenario 3. So this was looking at drive time between the two, LC and TJ. Okay, so this was kind of a line in between on each side of the distance to drive. As you can see, the two high schools are relatively close. Folks have asked, why did you put the school in Cedar Hills if it's not, where those students are going to go to school? Well, we own the land. Okay, so we own the land. It was paid for. Had questions of, well, they bought it, they shouldn't. That's water under the bridge. Regardless of how we have it to do on the land, it was paid for. And trying to weigh options, determine it's the best scenario. When we looked at doing this, this is a difference of 16.4% poverty. That Jefferson City High School would be a 59% poverty, and Capital City High School would be a 42% poverty. We said we didn't want to have the haves and the have-nots, keep them very similar. So that's why the committee felt that this scenario should be tabled. Okay, so that was just an example of that. Let's click on that. Let's go down to one like the 8. You can look at the rest of these on your own time. Let's go to 6. So this is probably at the very beginning, one of the most controversial. One of the scenarios was Covington Gardens. Do we live in Covington Gardens here? Okay. Covington Gardens is the southern portion of Lawson Elementary. One of the scenarios that was looked at was basically took the top portion of Cedar Hill, moved them into TJ, and then the bottom part of Lawson. So basically switch this and this switch. And so these folks in Covington Gardens would go over here to LC and the Clarence High School. There were 1 or 2 or 94 of them. Had some strong feelings about that. Valid, okay? We met with them, I had a conversation. This scenario was tabled, but this is an example of, you're telling me TJ's right here, and you're gonna make me go clear under this scenario, you would. They didn't care that these folks that have been living just south of them a ways have been doing that since '93. It didn't matter to them on that. Valid scenarios. This has been tabled, but that was about Covington Gardens, as it was a little bit controversial. And that's the reason why, again, to keep the, and common sense, you would just say, why would you? To try to keep the poverty rates similar, looking at those scenarios. Okay, let's go to 8.3, last one, and then or 8.2. Let's click on 8.2. This is basically taking this portion of West Elementary and having them come to LC. This portion of Cedar Hill move to, no, it's the top portion. The top portion, I think is this Highway C? Is that right? Blacktop C, I think. If you're on the north side of C in Cedar Hill, you go to TJ. And then to make up, so if you took these kids there, then you got to get more kids in LC. They took a portion of them from West. But this scenario was tabled. Even on this, would you scroll up there, please? At the top, the difference in poverty was, 3.6%, 76 kids different. But it was in changing some of West kids. This scenario, would you go to 8.1, please? Here was one of 8.1, their scenario was basically take all of Cedar Hill, put Cedar Hill in TJ and Capital City High School, and then to make up for that, of them switching half of West and then about 1/5 of Bel Air, have them switch to LC. That was their scenario. We had 1 or 2 West or Bel Air folks like, why would you do So, try to have empathy, put ourselves in other folks' shoes, to look at it from their scenario. We respect that, have understanding with that, but just trying to say we're vetting the process. When we take a recommendation to the Board of Education, that we vetted it, we considered every possible scenario in the world, and we can defend while using some common sense is the goal. Okay, let's, any questions about the overall, we won't go through anything else. Are there any other questions about boundary lines? More than you maybe care to know, or maybe that's very intriguing, didn't mean to take so much time. Yes?
Sorry, Mr. President, when you say table,
Yes.
what does that mean?
Table meeting, capital table meeting, right now, it's not in one of the top 5, but it's still there because it was brought as a scenario by the committee members. So it is not one of the final per se, but it's still a working, it's a work in progress, and it really is. Good question. Okay, all this stuff's on our district website. If you have any questions, I encourage you, those watching, encourage you to call, have a cup of coffee, if you have any questions regarding this. Okay, the other thing I want to just touch on here, and we'll open up question and answer, is on the mascot. So, Gary Royce, our assistant supersecretary, did a great job facilitating that process. The number one question I've been asked is, why not the Blue Jays? Okay, I literally said on the radio that I said, the Blue Jays to me were like the New York Yankees or the Dallas Cowboys. Either love them or you hate them. Nobody said to me, Blue Jays, well, that would be good. Nobody said that. They're like, man, why aren't we? Or that would be horrible if you did that. One way or the other. We've been talking about being strong together. Since I got here, we're going to continue to we believe in that, to drive that. And if Blue Jays was going to divide us, no different than Jefferson City West High School. Folks felt the same way. They felt they loved, why wouldn't we put Jefferson West on there? I'm like, you better not put that on there. So, Capital City Cavaliers, Capital City, I think we've got the right school, I think we've got the right mascot. We are excited about it. There's a lot of good stuff with this, but there are folks that have strong opinions about that. And the Blue Jays, they wanted to have the Jaybirds and they want to have the Blue Jays so we can still be the home of the Jays. Some folks felt very passionately about that. Some folks felt very passionately against that. That's fair. So this decision, our community decided that the Cavaliers, I know some students, I have a 7th grade student at TJ, the day that we announced Cavaliers, Dad, I wanted her picture in front of the Cavaliers with me, and she said, why wasn't it the Panthers? So in her circle friend on the Panthers. I said, well, that was an option. The Panthers, Cavaliers, and Ravens were the 3 finalists on that. So right now with Cavaliers, so the mascot, having, you type in Cavaliers, Cleveland Cavaliers, Virginia Cavaliers, swords, what is it, Cavaliers, the fluffy dog, is it a soldier, is it a Cavalier attitude that's not the most positive, it's something that is strong, it's got grit, resolve, that reflects who our community is. We're going to be working through that process. We can have we talk about school safety, having a sword, okay? I don't anticipate having a sword on the side of the school the size of this atrium here. But a sword, I anticipate that a sword will somehow be part, it's not be the primary focus. We've got legal advice on that. It's not illegal to have a sword, but it's not going to be our primary focus because we want safe schools and a positive learning environment. So we don't want to be condoning it. Ooh, what do you have? The shield. So when I have the shield, Elias has their shield with the H on it. So I don't see that being a primary focus as a shield because Elias has that. So there's a lot of different parts to that, but I did want to touch on the Blue Jays because I've been asked that a lot through that process. And it was discussed at our board meeting, and at the end of the day, the committee did a great job, and it wasn't included when we went to the community. The community voted. And the Cavaliers. So, any questions on that? Okay. So, we've talked about boundary lines, we've talked about the building project, and talked about mascot. Any questions on any of them? Anything that I need to hit on for our folks that are here, for our district wide, we need to touch on any of those parts before we just open up on any questions district wide stuff. We do have a board meeting Monday night. We had an election, and we will be having 2 new board members. Congratulations to them, Ken Enlow and Lindsay Rowden. And so they'll be sworn in Monday night at our board meeting, and there'll be some changes with that, going forward with that. So there's a lot of different parts, and a lot of things are going on, but it's all good things, okay? And it's change can be challenging at times. We all know that. So whether, school safety, that's another topic. As a general rule, we are not arming our teachers with guns, okay, just on school safety. I know that's a controversial topic. We want our teachers to focus on teaching and learning as their primary focus. We have a great partnership with JCPD and our law enforcement. We want to strengthen that partnership. Could it be better? Absolutely, it can be better. We have armed officers in all of our secondary schools. And as a general rule, we're going to talk about on Monday night at our board meeting, but as a general rule, if we think that we need to have more adults being armed, looking at strengthening that or having more officers if we were going to go that versus arming our teachers and administrators. Again, we want them to focus on that instructional time and focusing on teaching and learning. So we'll talk about that Monday night. Our current policy says that unless you're a law enforcement officer, you are not allowed to have a weapon on school property. Well, I've got my concealed carry. It doesn't matter. Unless you are a law enforcement officer, you are not allowed to have a weapon on our school property. If somebody does, we would ask them to leave, they could be charged with trespassing. Somebody gave me an example. What if the coroner, and he's got a gun, and he's like, well, we wouldn't charge him with trespassing. We'd ask him, would you mind leaving here? We want to work together and use some common sense to that approach, but still providing that safe learning environment for all our students. So, what questions do you have? Yes, Alan?
When I was teaching, the teaching workload was heavy with switching and making all the changes that are being made. Has that improved? Are we overloading our teachers? What's the climate of staff in terms of the process that we went through?
We're asking our teachers, and this is your teacher, we're asking our teachers to do a lot of things. I think our staff of being in, I try to do 1 building a day, and just make a loop through or greet parents in the far right drop off line, having a sense of how things are going. I think Brandon's going to touch on a school safety survey that we asked our staff. We had, how many staff? 531 of our staff members, primarily teachers, and we have 751 teachers, I believe, so a good chunk of those filled out on you feel safe at school, and then provided some open-ended questions that gave them an opportunity. I'd like to say it's improved. Would everybody say that? No, but I think the more would say that it is improving. I think they feel there's a clear direction. We're focusing on reading is our #1 priority. The 100% of our kids at or above grade reading level reading wise. That vision to be a premier school district throughout that process. So if you ask 48 different teachers what they thought, 48 would have differing opinions, but I would like to think overall from conversations, from our secondary Gary, from elementary Lori, I'd like to think that it is improved. But I know we've got a lot of, we're asking our folks to do a lot of things throughout that process. Yes?
Safety wise. Do
Yeah.
you guys do any kind of intruder drills?
We do.
How often?
Franklin, who's our head of our safety, and he'll be there Monday night to give an update on it, and I should know this. We are required to do, now you can do intruder drills, you can go into lockdown, and how often? Missy is a teacher, you could elaborate on that. How often, Missy, from your lens?
Intruder, well, I think 3 times a year.
Okay. Lockdown, we are going to give a schedule, have it more of clockwork. We are meeting as far as what we are required, but we also want to make sure that it's a different day and age that we're in, and we recognize that. So making sure that, and how effective it is if it's just checking a box. All of our schools have secured entrances. As far as one thing through the safety, I think, and I won't steal the thunder Monday night, but overall, our staff and our parents feel safe. Now, they have some concerns. We're going to touch on those Monday night that I don't think has to do with fearing for their life. There's some things that we know we can we know we have to get better. So that training and our staff development, and I think just having an awareness, if something looks out of whack, do something about it. And having that culture with our students where if something seems out of the ordinary, say something versus just like, it's nothing. It's no different from when you're no, it's not in your house, right? It's like, was that this or was that, if you think it's out of the ordinary, you get up and do something, right? Versus roll over and let it go. So we're trying not to let anything go in the use and comments to do that. So, any questions on that or anything else? Yeah.
I've read statistics that, I think it's elementary teachers in general, staying 5 years or less. Are we monitoring longevity of staff? Is the district doing an exit survey with individuals who are leaving?
Shelby, you want to touch on that? Shelby's our director of HR, and look at this, her first year here. She's hitting it out of the park. We'll go ahead there specifically on that, Shelby.
We have followed up with our new staff, doing like 30, 60, 90-day follow-up, just to see how things are going, if there's better ways we can help with our onboarding process to make sure that they're successful. And then we're doing exit surveys as people leave. Some people are opting to do those anonymously, some want to do them face-to-face. So just so we can get a good picture of how our staff view things, are there better ways we can improve, and also know why people stay. I think that's just as important as finding out why people leave. What are the great things that are going on, and how can we continue to market what we have to offer people when they are looking for jobs?
Alan, I think it's a great point. I mean, where the rubber meets the road is our teaching in the classroom. And when we're asking them to do a lot of things, but creating that, one of our 3 priorities are climate, culture, and our buildings. And district-wide, I feel it's improved. Does that mean it's perfect? By no means. But trying to work through that, providing staff development in areas of need to become premier, and that's going to start with making sure that our kids learn and making sure that our staff, that we give them the resources they need to be able to do that. So, a lot of different parts to it. Do you have a question?
Well, when I told my daughter I was coming here, she made sure I would say, she goes to Simonson. I have twin boys that are graduating this year.
Yeah.
So she said she loves that the principals greet them every day
Yeah.
at Simonson. And she thinks it's great that every one of her teachers that she ever asks to work after school, stay and do that. So good, 2 positive things.
Good.
Mine are about sports facilities,
Yeah.
in regard to 2 sports, soccer and archery. So she's on the soccer team.
Okay.
And they recently had to go to Springfield because of bad weather. We don't allow soccer on the football field. And her question is why? Why can't we line the football field for soccer and let girls and boys use it in inclement weather when needed?
Right. Fair question. So the decision was made, was it 2007, 2008, I believe, in Acton Stadium, as far as we put turf on there, as far as to not put lines on there, to be allowed for soccer. They also have runways, I believe, for his long and triple jump on the back side, I believe, which is inside, and pole vault is on the end, but I think there's a long jump runway, which, I mean, you'd be covered, but it still looks the ideal. Why that decision was made sometime ago, at Capital City High School, we are looking at options of what that would look like with regards to those lines. A football field and a soccer field, a track, will meet NISHA and federal guidelines. A track is not just one track. It's 400 meters around for one lap. It can be squished, it can be wider and still have 400 meters. The wider, our current football field would meet a soccer within. Most soccer coaches want a wider field on the inside. Okay, when I was a football coach, when we were slow, I let the grass grow high to slow down our opponent. If we were fast, I wanted it really short. Same thing, if you're fast, you want it wider as most of our soccer coaches want it wider. So, they have used it for practice when inclement weather there. It's not a regular basis. We have track there after school, and track soccer balls. They can coordinate that, and they have done that. Moving forward, we anticipate having lines. I know if you drove like Elias's field, they have, and they use, I don't know what the color is, but they have soccer lines on the football field. But it's not I mean, you can go to a basketball gymnasium and you you got PE, and you got volleyball, and you got basketball, and you got lines everywhere, and it's like overload. That you can do it subtly while also realizing the importance of soccer as well. So, to answer your question, why that decision was made before, as far as being able to use that for competition, we will have that at Capital City High School, and we do anticipate then Jeff City High School, Capital City High School, both being able to use that when there's inclement weather having turf for that when it's poor weather. But it cannot be used right now for competition for games, for soccer.
Is that a decision you guys would be willing to look at again? I know you said it, it was made in 2000.
Right.
I mean, the Capital City, that stadium won't be built for, what, a few years? It's not planned right away?
It will not be finalized, I mean, practice-wise, I don't know if it's gonna be finalized turf fall of 15, fall of 19 on the inside of the stadium. Will that be complete? I know freshman and sophomore, I don't anticipate it being able to use that year. Maybe it will be. Right. 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 Right.
Goal is to not only use that fast, but go ahead and whether that's August or the end of the year, everything's
Right. So to answer your question, would we be willing to look at that? Absolutely. It's not that, okay, we'll get some duct tape and we'll put out there lines, and I know you want to define it. The lifespan of turf, okay, is in of course, if you're selling turf, you'd say it's been every 4 years, but as a general rule, 10 years. And we're 11, 12, we're looking at redoing the turf at Atkins Stadium when we redo Capital City, looking at both of them, looking at lines during it. For right now, to say would we aggressive, we would look at that. I don't know if that would work right now. We've not had the soccer coaches come and say, here's our proposal, we want this used for games, right now, here this spring or this fall of 18, and here's how we'll make it work, we'll cover the sand pit, we'll do this, we'll do that. That's not been brought to us. If it was, we would look at that. Consider pros and cons. I'm not saying we would do it, but we would look at that while also considering just covering a sand pit. There's some possible injury things with regards to a sand pit covering that when it's still a part of the playing field, because that decision was made years ago. And then the lining of it right now on turf, when you already have the turf, I mean, it's already part of the carpet per se. But as far as looking at options, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, any other, it's 9, 7, better not be 9 o'clock.
Last question.
Yeah, last one.
David,
No, you said last
how are
one?
we doing, how's the district doing in terms of student discipline?
How are we doing on student discipline? Well, that's a really good question. I could ask, what do you mean by that? Okay, it's a very subjective. Do we have students making poor choices? We do. Will one make it today? I would bet that some students will. The staff development, creating a culture and climate, not a gotcha method, but we believe the reading aspect is a huge portion of it. At the middle schools, I've asked twice, 2 different times, of the students that were in school suspension, what percent of those kids were below grade reading level? 100%, every time. So we feel that is a long-term, deeper rooted solution to improve on that. If all of our students can read, our discipline will be less. So, student behavior. So, of a set, classroom management, okay, greeting kids every day, having that environment where they want to be, to inspire them versus you screw up, I'm going to nail you, changing that mindset that some do have. But if they do make a poor choice, holding them accountable, but while also hopefully as a learning opportunity for them to make a better choice. So, classroom management for our staff is one element of that. Having that positive learning environment, focusing on teaching and learning, and if we do a better job of that, we'll have less student discipline. Working with parents, what do we expect at school? Having clear expectations. Riding on the bus, students, we know that we can get better on that. It's an extension of the classroom, how they ride on the bus. So, how are student behaviors going? If you ask 73 different staff members, you get 73 different answers. As a general rule, it's still one of our 3 priorities, knowing it's got to get better. And we know that starts with me, and we're trying to work through that through our buildings. And overall, if you were to give me, if I had to give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down, is it better than it was 3 years ago? I would say thumbs up, as in it's better. Is it where it needs to be? By no means. But I feel it's better with having, I think our literacy going forward, and the reading element, having clear expectations, increasing our behavior interventionists, having clear expectations of what that looks like, greeting kids every day. I mean, the research would say, if you do everything else the same, you greet kids every day when they come to your classroom, student achievement will go up 29%. If you do nothing different other than, hey, I'm glad to see you, give them a fist bump when they come in the classroom. So that's an important part of that. So, do all of our teachers do that? No. Do more than used to? Yeah. I tweeted out this morning, fabulous Friday. Okay, so let's make a difference today. Wednesday, we do winning Wednesdays. That, hey, let's make a difference and work through the process. So, how you measure that is very, it's going to be an ongoing, it's going to be a priority next year, it's going to be a priority next year. Our community, our parent, our staff said loud and clear, student behaviors has got to be better. And we recognize that. Holding them accountable, but also helping them to learn and make good choices and try to inspire them versus, oh, we'll just kick you out. Because that's not helping graduation rates and that's not helping them. Is that a fair? I know there's different parts to it now.
There's a lot of things in terms of teachers handling the behavior in their classroom and how the administration supports that. You know, those are a lot of factors, I think, in terms of climate and culture. So
I would agree. Okay, I have 7:57. I'll stay after as long as you would like. Thank you guys for coming here this morning. Did you get a picture of folks? Okay. Okay, thank you guys for coming and have a great day. Yep. Thanks for coming, man.